So yes, let's jump right to the topic. Uh, some of the parts of my presentation will kind of overlap with the content what Alex did present, but I'm still excited about the functionality. Let's talk about triggers, calculated items, aggregated items, so-called like unified syntax in the 5.4. And yeah, why this topic? Why I'm like selecting a very dedicated topic just to talk about these type of things? We have three categories, three type of things we can uh, manage inside the instance, and each of them is having some sort of own syntax, and we cannot like be sure what syntax to use here. And yeah, the like let's have unified syntax. Let's have like the very same syntax in every section which we utilize inside the monitoring tool, and it will ease up the documentation task. It will ease up the configuration process. Uh, let's recap a little bit what is a trigger and what is a calculated item. Trigger is some logic when we calculate some mathematical formula. If it is true, it will generate an event, like so-called a problem. And in the same time, calculated item is also doing some calculation, but it at the end it will store a value inside the database. This value either will be an integer or a floating number. So both these things are doing some calculation, but the syntax was different before 5.4. Now it's the same. Uh, so what's different in the 5.4? The very like it all starts almost with an item, because an item is the way how we collect the metric. And previously it was we are always having this application type of thing. Whenever we design an item, it can be a memory type of thing, network, CPU, and it was having an application. Now we have these column tags, and you see like here the tag value is actually application, and the value of the tag is the thing which was previously called as application. So this really lets us to have a very flawless upgrade operation. It will just replace the field, and yeah, the default name will be application, and then comes additional value. And the application field is completely go away. Now we have only tags inside the level of the item. Going further, time suffix is now mandatory. This is, I would say, this is huge because previously when we see this number 600, we instantly think, yes, that's 10 minutes. But now we will convert all these numbers inside the interface to use some like human readable format. Finally, there will be nothing like calculation in your brain. What is the meaning of this number? So it will be really a mandatory thing to always specify minutes, seconds, hours, days. It's like a good guidelines just for other guys to or ladies to be capable to read what is the actual frequency. And in the same time, the hashtag thing will go away completely, and we will just drop the hashtag. And now, to indicate I want to analyze last 600 values, I'm really specified the number 600. And like if we don't follow newsletter of Zabbix, if we don't read release notes, we may end up like upgrading Zabbix and be very confused. And maybe at the first glance we will think that the instance is broken. Why we are now collecting 60 values, but yeah, previously it was like time, but now it will look like the values, but that's yeah, it will be now without the hashtag, it's values, and it's a very different way how it was before. This is a very big change. Yeah, one tiny hint about the templates. If the template will still contain all the old numbers, it will be respected and it will be converted on the fly to the human readable number, and including the suffix. Okay, going further, another big change is whenever we deal with trigger functions, the first argument, for the most of times, the first argument was what is like the scope of interval you want to like the frame you want to use as an input, like analyze the metrics from the last 1 hour. That was the first argument. And then if we want to go back maybe in the last like 24 hours, then after comma, we did use this time shift. So things change, and we decided to use everything as a one argument. So it will be argument to specify, for example, yesterday. If I want to do some analytics per yesterday or per last week or per last year, we can use that as a one argument. And I will talk about this in the detail in upcoming slides. Going further, another change, quite big one, is the functions which seek if the data is containing a string. Like the first one, string function, which is less CPU intensive. It can search just a string, and if we want some complex pattern to define, then we utilize regex or in case sensitive regular expression function. And now it will be only one function. It's called find, and again, at the surface level, you may like make a panic. What happens? I have a case sensitive search using a very complex regular expression pattern. I will say, don't worry. Everything is covered with the find function. It will just contain more arguments, which will really specify is this simple, like a string way to search, which consumes less CPU power, or maybe we really need to utilize the regular expression thing. Okay, let me have a sip of water. So the new syntax, after all, let's recap. Here in the old version, the trigger has curly parentheses at the beginning and at the end, and then there is in the middle the key and the trigger function, or just like some function which do some mathematical stuff. And there's a dot in the middle, and the dot will go away. Now, the syntax, the unified syntax, it will always start with the function, and this will let us to put some like recursion. Sometimes some functions are supporting multiple arguments, and we can put a function inside the function. That's like a big thing. It was a limitation before. But yeah, that's the reason we start with the function, so we can have some functions inside. And yeah, the syntax is very similarly to the Linux file system. It starts with the / and then comes the host name, and then comes the item key, and then after the first comma comes this like interval, including the shifting. If we want to go back to the yesterday, then after the first comma, it will be all together. Yeah, and this syntax, it will be the same for the triggers, for the calculated items, and previously we did have the aggregated item. Like the section actually will go the way, and if you want to do some aggregation, then inside the interface we have to use this calculated item. Okay, going further, some examples what you can accomplish now, and it was not possible before. Let's have this some samples per absolute time period. For example, today, we want to have a trigger which does something with today's date, which that just happened after the midnight. And for example, here it's a silly example, but still, we are looking if the workstation is on after the 10 a.m. in the morning. And and it's done by summing together agent ping items, because if the agent ping is not there, it will be like 0. And if it starts to reach the agent, it will start to like produce the numbers 1. So if the sum of agent ping is 0, then the agent is still offline, and no one has turned on this workstation. Okay, different example. Yesterday, again, this example involves a workstation, not a server, really. So we will seek for the uptime. We will look for the uptime. What was the maximum uptime in the yesterday? And if it is bigger than 10 hours, maybe the person is really sitting to the computer too much, and we should take care of we should remind the person to not like to stop do the like Instagram stuff or something. It's time for life outside the computer world. So this trigger will identify that yesterday a person did use the computer too much. Okay, a different kind of I'm still talking about these absolute time periods. I'm very excited about this functionality. I found it very, very useful. So last week, an example per last week, where we are analyzing user sessions. And so in this example, like Oracle monitoring, and we have the user sessions, and we search for the maximal peak last week, like one metric. What was the maximal peak at the last week? And we are comparing this peak with the peak at the yesterday. And if it is like 2 times more, if yesterday the user session was 2 times more, then it's a problem, and we can get an event about that. Okay, and a last example, per time periods, we can analyze the whole previous month. And here in example, we have the module, like the stock module, memory utilization per Windows machine. And we are looking for the used memory in this example. Like, what is the maximal used memory in the last month per server? Not the workstation. This time it's a server. And we look and compare this used thing with the total amount of memory. And maybe the server is not even utilizing the half of the memory. We will get notified. The beauty of this trigger is that the stock template is already containing all those items, 12 items. It contains the collection per used memory, contains the collection per total memory. All we need to do is go to the trigger section, install this trigger, and in the very next second, when one metric comes to the trigger, it will generate the event about the last month, because all the data is stored inside the database. Okay, a different type of functionality. Now we can compare the textual strings. We can like use different type of inputs, different servers, node 1, node 2, and compare the agent versions. And if the version is different or the same, then you decide what is the problem. It will fire up an event, and we can include like inside the event title what is the difference between those versions. Okay, aggregated checks. So previously we were talking about triggers, and now triggers when we calculate something and generate events. But now when we calculate something and want to store the data inside the database. And here is one example. Let's imagine we have a website. We have a template, and template contain a web scenario, and web scenario consists with multiple steps, like checking 4 pages, and it will provide at the latest data page. It will provide what is the response time per each page. What we can do, we can go in the template, select this calculated item, and tell I want to aggregate all those response time metrics. This is like built-in metric, which is really indicating response time. It's not these characters are like coming from the stock item. And this star thing, like wildcard, it will tell the Zabbix to aggregate all the items, which is really reflecting the response time. And this / means please do the aggregation for the current host. So this is installed inside the template. Here, an interesting like history. This for each will be now like all over the place whenever we do the aggregation. If you are familiar with Windows PowerShell, then the command is exactly the same. There is like 7 characters for each, and then we go through different type of elements, either through the hosts, either through the items. Going further, a different type of aggregation. It's using the same approach but different use case. So let's say we are monitoring the disk space. We are capturing the usage space, and the device, Linux or Windows machine, can have different drives, different mounts. And we can really, with using this one calculated item, we can aggregate what is the total usage space per all the mounts or per all the drives. Maybe like a server is having 4 drives, and now it's time to purchase an SSD drive, and we want to know how much disk space we need to really capture everything in one drive. So that can be like use case here. Another type of functionality, aggregation by the host group. We have the group MySQL servers, and inside the MySQL servers, there is like stock solution applied, official solution applied, which is looking for the queries per second. And it will aggregate all the queries per second, like in one single item. If there is like a pool of MySQL servers, then you will end up seeing what is the total number of these queries. And afterwards, you can link a trigger on this item. Okay, and I think the last example, not only by the host group we can do the aggregation, but also by utilizing this item tags, item tag name or and tag value. And here, in example, it does not need to be like a tag in the item level. You can mark your host element like with the role. This is domain controller. You do that marking with the host level, and it will work. You create this item inside the template, and it will really seek for all these items, which really belong to very specific host, which is having this tag and tag value, and do the aggregation, and we will end up having an item which is having like a usage space per all domain controllers. All right, that's it for my presentation. I will stop sharing the screen. Yes.
Okay, so let's look at the Q&A section. And let's see, what do we have here? Okay, one common question. So an upgrade happens, right? So what about trigger item syntax? Do we have to rebuild everything? Is it going to get affected? What's going to happen with that?
It gets upgraded automatically. No worries for that. But as I was testing in the test environment, I noticed like several log states, some items like needs to be checked. So I would highly suggest to extract the configuration and test the upgrade process beforehand, really to prepare how those other items will really affect the system. Just to be extra careful.
One more question. Have you looked at predictive trigger syntax? Any changes there or improvements?
Predictive.
It's forecast and time left, maybe there's something new, or
I have not looked. Should be the same.
Should be the same. But definitely take a look at the roadmap, guys. I remember at least a while ago there were some plans to improve that, and it's probably still scheduled down the line. Actually, we can wait for Alexei to be back, and maybe he can cover it at the end of this here release day event. Do aggregate and calculate items support regular expressions in the key field?
Aggregated items. As I recall, we can do the aggregation with the count. We can go through the. I will look that and I can answer that in the chat.
Yeah, feel free to answer that in text. I think that'll be safer rather than guessing. Yeah. What else? Okay, can we, when we're doing an aggregation, is it always going to be just on a single host, or can we specify a host group or maybe a tag, aggregate by tags or something like that?
Yes, surely. The aggregation by host group is possible as it was before, but now it's more flexible. We need to specify just host, like we can specify button, wildcard for the host item, and then we can really add additional value by using the host group or by specifying what kind of tag the item should have, and it will really respect your decision. And we can combine all those things together. I mean, filter by host group plus filtering by the tag name and tag value. It's supported.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's what the user was looking for. Very, very useful. And what about when we're doing the upgrade? What about the prototype items and triggers for the little discovery rules? Those are also going to be automatically switched over, right?
Absolutely. And there is no reason to leave them with the previous syntax.
Okay. Thank you, Aigars.